Evening, everyone. Once again, it's a real pleasure for Maggie and I to be with you. We remember with fondness the time that we spent with you about 18 months ago nearly now, and it really is a pleasure to be back at Ballee especially, but also just here in the province with such wonderful fellowship wherever we've been and such a warm welcome that we receive from everybody. This evening I'd like to take a look at the letter to the Romans and chapter 11. So if you have your Bibles with you, if I could ask you please to turn to Romans chapter 11 and be ready with that chapter. But just before we get to it, by way of introduction, chapters 9, 10 and 11 of this letter speak of Israel past, Israel present and Israel future. And here we also find answers to those who would say that God has finished with Israel and replaced Israel with the church. In the opening verses of chapter 9, Paul speaks with great heaviness and continual sorrow in his heart. He explains the difference between the Jew naturally descended from Abraham, the Jew of the flesh, and the Jew who is of Abraham's spiritual seed, the Jew of the promise. And the children of God are those who are of the promise and not of the flesh. The prophets foretold that although Israel would be blinded and God's mercy extended to the Gentiles, there will be a remnant saved out of Israel. But whereas in chapter 9, verse 30, the Gentiles which followed not after righteousness have attained to righteousness, even the righteousness which is of faith, Israel followed the law and sought righteousness by works and not faith. In chapter 10, Paul tells how the apparent failure of the promises to Israel can be explained by their